Hi.
Hello and welcome.
See, I knew it. That's what everyone's expecting. I've decided in 2023 to just be a wild card. That's it. Not do what is expected.
Anand, this is your last day in office for a while.
It is.
You care to tell our listeners why you are not going to be in office?
I am on paternity leave
Wow.
starting a few days from now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
Actually, yesterday I got cornered in the office and I was asked questions like, what is your parenting style? Why have you chosen to do this? And very existential questions. I just said, oh, look at the time. I have somewhere to. I have to
But last
be,
week you also set up a meeting in this conference room that was labeled. What was
Baby.
the label? It was
Baby.
Baby.
Yeah.
And who did you call for that meeting?
Anil.
Yes. So there were people out there.
Maybe that's what I call him. He's
Yeah, maybe.
within the
Yeah,
realm
we
of
spent enough
possibility.
time with him to earn that nickname.
Anil has done all the research that one has to do on every product on the planet, and
It's
I
true.
just wanted to borrow from his research.
Yes.
Said, what's the best this to buy? And he just gave me a list, and I went and bought it.
Excellent. Speaking of the best, seems like people are bringing back the best in the media and entertainment world. People we thought had retired, people we thought that had hung up their shoes or whatever other euphemism you want to talk about, and written a book about what a ride it had been. So all of us, I think, listened to the new, not new, was it new? Or was it a repeated telecast of a podcast?
It was new.
It was new?
It was new.
But it
We're
was
talking
before that,
about
before his announcement of coming.
Andreessen Horowitz's podcast where they interviewed Bob Iger.
Yeah, but that was before Disney announced that Bob Iger was coming back
Correct.
as CEO.
Correct. But apparently he had not given up his office.
Oh,
And so technically he was still somewhere on the radar. But I must say it was a very, very fun podcast.
what struck you as fun and what insights did you get from it?
So I have found him to be a very inspiring person even before this. I've read his book. I've heard him on the podcast. He had a masterclass at one point about running a business, where he went deep into creativity and how to build a business around it. I loved some of the stories he told about the first time he met Steve Jobs and how they hit it off simply because they both believed in speed. Also about some of the cultural things they learned from Pixar. He's made a ton of very interesting acquisitions, and some of those have come with interesting tidbits, such as he talked about how at Pixar, every movie that they make gets a dedicated largish conference room where all the meetings, all the jams, all the brainstorming about that movie takes place. But it's kind of permanent. All the artwork's up on the wall. There's always film that's streaming on a TV. If you walk into that room, you will only immerse yourself into the era, the fabric, the story that movie is all about. And I thought that was very interesting because he said, it's a cultural shift because usually you book a room for a meeting and you get out and kind of leave it clean. But here, it's the conference room itself is an immersive experience. So I thought I'm a big believer in good physical space for any team. And I thought that was an interesting tidbit. Of course, Bob talked about streaming and the switch of business models. I actually wonder if maybe he stepped away for the pandemic years and now is quietly coming back.
I mean, it looks like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody thought the pandemic would last this long and have these many repercussions.
Yeah. What did you like on the podcast?
I like the fact, like even the physical spaces, right? What he spoke about, saying that none of his superiors, when he was starting out, would have known what he was capable of or given him the opportunity to do what he's doing today if there was no physical space, because that gave them the opportunity to understand what kind of a person he is. Virtual spaces have its place. I don't disagree with it. I think it's great that we're able to transact with people on different time zones across the world without so much as a click of a button, right? But day-to-day working is relationship building. And I think a healthy dose of in-person physical interaction goes a long way. It stays with you. You know how people make you feel. And there are so many cues that the brain actually processes that we don't give any cadence to, right? Small things, your body language, the way you're looking at somebody, what you're distracted by, what your quirks are. All of that can be endearing and infuriating at the same time, but it makes for good relationship building base. What I also liked about what struck me about what they're speaking about in terms of advertising and content, because that's where my focus has always been in what's going on with the advertising industry and where and what do the biggies think about it, because everybody seems to be turning the corner on that. Netflix, after swearing never to go down the advertising route, now has a certain amount of their revenue coming from advertising. And very recently, I was scrolling through my recommendations on Netflix, and I saw Nike something, right? And I was like, "What is this?" So then I went back. Of course, I find the uh, I find the CTV interface for OTT apps irritating. So I went to my phone, which has now become my remote control, where my app is already there as well, so I can um, look through it much faster. So it's more like maybe muscle memory for my phone, or bad tech on CTV, whichever you want to blame or reward. But I went in, I put in just the word Nike in my search bar in Netflix, and a collection of Nike workout videos kind of came together. And it took me back to what Bob Iger was saying on this Web3 podcast by A16Z. He says that, you know, people will always drift towards good experiences, whether it's given to you by a brand or by content or by people or spaces where you go eat, whatever, right? Good experiences will always draw people there, and they will do anything to get that good experience. It may not be all the time, but they will do a lot to make sure that they're accessing that good experience. So he talks about advertising and content, and where you can actually bring a good experience to your users, giving them best of both worlds in branded content. And what Netflix has done by taking these Nike videos and putting them on Netflix is a testament to it. Now, these Nike videos were not made by Netflix, because I showed it to Rohan and he said, "Hey, these are on the Nike app and I've done a couple of these workouts." So they have syndicated brand created content onto a entertainment OTT platform, which is going to be viewed in a household. And, working out to a workout tape or a YouTube video is not alien. So I don't see the time that's very far beyond where I can have my own curated sets of workout videos that I can actually access and get more of, and signal to Netflix to go and bring me some more of these videos, because I'm trying to cement all of my viewing habits into one app. So I think branded content is something that really needs more of a fillip. It needs more of a push in the world of advertising as well, because video is now easier to actually create. A lot more ideas going around. There's so many more platforms for you to put it up on that doesn't require to jump through any kind of regulation or know people, right? So and discovery is therefore that much more easy. Plus identity. So I know who to give this video to, who will really appreciate it. Something sparked an idea.
For the next segment. But I thought you touched upon something interesting, which is that Bob talked about how everything boils down to giving the user a good experience. And I think back to every time I have interacted with one of his products, Disney, Pixar, or Lucas, George Lucas films. The one thing that he touched upon in the podcast is the fact that culture, and I think we touched upon this a few weeks ago. I was talking about how, I'm amazed at the world of podcasts, because you get to listen to some of the biggest thinkers on the planet in a very casual sitting. You can read their books, you can watch their interviews, but those are all formal settings. This, I think, is something that no generation before us has ever had. And I know I'm over romanticizing it, but I really enjoy listening to conversations, because what I found is that if I had to meet Bob Iger, if I ever had the chance and I had to ask him a couple of questions, this is the kind of thought that I would look to get from him. He's talking about giving people a good experience. He's talking about the way they organize their people. I love the fact that, for instance, he said at Disney they have a culture where whoever seeds the idea has to work on the film. You don't have the idea coming from one team and then you bring in directors to then actually put the film together. You own it.
That's what Pixar used to do, and that's what Disney adopted, because it was the other way around in Disney. Which is also another thing that we were talking about in terms of when Chris Dixon at this in this podcast as well, who's also from A16, he talks about how creatives and engineers are so similar. right? In terms of temperament, in terms of the way they behave and how you manage them, which is something we've always been grappling with and we always thought about it, but we never really leaned into it as hard. But I feel like, that podcast has so many great nuggets. The other part was about digital and physical experiences, back to virtual working, etc. But it kind of took a thread on to theme parks because one of Disney's biggest revenue generators are all their theme parks, and they're also thinking in theme parks. So when he thinks about it, just like the room, he also thinks Bob Iger also thinks about the fact that, hey, if I pick up these rights or if we make this movie, where can it fit? Can I have, a toy land? Can I have some other kind of land in Disney, right? In their theme parks, and the fact that the theme parks in itself have become a premium experience also makes me believe that any physical experience today is deemed a premium experience, right? It also stems from, can this meeting just be an email kind of thought, right? Could I just watch this movie sitting on my couch at home instead of taking, so much trouble to come to a theater? So I feel theatrical experiences also today will become far better than what we were used to, which is why my bet is still on that theater will definitely be there. It'll be an expensive, a premium experience, which means that even the kind of stuff that gets made into a cinematic experience will be on that cadre. Everything else will go into OTT and CTV.
And let me give you another data point. After I said 2 weeks ago that I will only be drawn to the theater for movies that are theater worthy, I am going to watch a movie tomorrow in the theater called Kutte. Okay, so
What is it? Who's in Kutte?
Nasiruddin Shah,
Oh, well, that's worth it.
Konkona Sen Sharma. It's got a good.
Great acting.
Yeah, it's great acting. But I will let you know next time if it's good or not. You brought up something from the Ad Exchanger podcast where they interviewed the CEO of Bloggraph, where he talked about the fact that tech has become media faster than media has become tech.
What a profound what a profound sentence, right? My God, I have marbles in my mouth.
Very nice way of putting it.
Yes.
But I found that when you listen to podcasts from Mark Andreessen, Bob Iger, some of these big thinkers, they tend to have this techno-optimism, as they call it, where even Bob Iger said, look, creatives and engineers are similar people, and they are quickly realizing that the power of putting both together can unlock the greatest of experiences. He said a lot of creatives would have worried for a while that tech is going to come and replace them, until they realize that if you want to depict snow in a scene and not have to go somewhere to film it, tech can give you the ability to enable that experience. I read a very interesting piece last week about how James Cameron shot Avatar, and apparently it took them years to put together the technology to shoot it. And Bob talked about this. He said, Jim shoots on his own schedule.
He's earned the right to do it.
He's earned the right to do it.
Yeah.
But he said he creates technology to be able to make the kind of movies and experiences that he wants. And so this interplay between tech and media, especially in the creative space, is again reminding me that we live in a very exciting time.
Yes, and the creative space is all around us, everywhere, right from TikTok and disrupt TVs to regular content.
I cannot leave this segment without asking you what your favorite Pixar movie is. What's your favorite Pixar movie? What's your favorite Pixar movie?
I would think Toy Story, the first one.
Wall-E.
Also Pixar.
Inside Out.
Inside
Oh,
Out.
beautiful.
That's beautiful, yeah.
Toy Story.
Toy Story. I think Toy Story blew my mind because
Yeah.
that was the first of its kind at that time.
It did, but for me, my favorite is a tie between Up and Soul. Ratatouille also. Yeah, well, now we're not. Now we're,
Now
staying,
we're in
now
the
we're
scene.
listing
I think
everything.
all-time favorite has got to be for me. You've always liked Up.
I love Up. Soul, but Soul took over from Up
Yeah.
a while ago. Oh man. Before we move on to the next segment, I wanted to touch upon the Golden Globes.
Oh, yes. Lowest viewership in all time, 5.4 million viewers.
But viewership for the big awards, I can give you my data point, which is up until 3 years ago, I used to religiously watch the Oscars and the Globes, and now I don't. I just
Yeah.
catch up with the results. I mean, I watch, maybe it's TikTok and short videos, because this year, the way I caught up to the Golden Globes is I just watched all the shorts of all the key moments. But I must say, Jennifer Coolidge's speech about White Lotus and about Mike White was very heartfelt and beautiful and fun to watch. I do believe that White Lotus is possibly one of the best things I've seen in some time. I just loved every single thing about it, and I'm happy it won.
I'm happy it won too, and I'm happy Jennifer Coolidge also won because it's been a while. And she kind of talks about the struggles of being an actor in this world and waiting in your youth and your younger days for something like this to happen. And a lot of us also have this barrier, right? Saying that by the time I'm 40, I got to be doing this. I want to retire when I'm 45. I want to, I don't know, be on a vineyard when I'm 50. I don't know. There are a lot of these various age gated things that we put in our minds. But I feel in today's day and age, there is so much fluidity and there is no need for you to stop. There's so much opportunity. And people like Mike White and Jennifer Coolidge have really shown us that good acting can come from anywhere. Good scripts don't have to be something that you have to like take a bike and jump off a ramp for. You don't have to be young to do it physically, but you can still deliver a great performance. But she actually credits her coming back to life as she says. She says that people may have thought I was dead or something to the Ariana Grande music video when they have the bend and snap entire montage that happens over there. And everybody was talking about Legally Blonde, which is also one of my other favorite movies because it is one of those surprisingly good movies.
I watched it recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife, Varsha, figured out that I hadn't watched it and she forced me to watch it a few
it's a
weeks
fun
ago.
movie.
Yeah.
It's a real fun movie. Yeah.
I'm not so big on RRR, though. Come on.
I haven't watched this.
I watched it. I've
You
had
did?
the.
Did you like it?
Nope.
What was it about?
I don't know, people like fighting, jumping through the air and things that defies the laws of physics. I didn't. It was really long. I guess the song was nice and maybe that's why they won. But
Want to sing it? You know the
no,
song?
no.
Come on. You can do
I
it.
actually don't know the. Anyway, I wanted to move on to something else that I read this week that we were talking about on Slack, which is the fact that Amazon is launching its own sports app, or at least is rumored to be launching its own sports app, which goes against so much that I have thought about. I mean, the one way to look at it is to say they will still benefit from the fact that Amazon is playing the LTV, or the lifetime value game, where you get a Prime subscription and you get everything from faster delivery to content to music to games to lots of experiences. Which is kind of why I always believed that Amazon was playing a very different game compared to everybody else, and which is also why I believe every other move that we're seeing, Netflix launching advertising, Netflix getting into games, Netflix talking about their own play with sports without buying sports rights. For me, it is all pointing to this broad trend that hybrid revenue is the way to go. Until I read about them launching a new app. Now, I know Evan Shapiro has written this open letter to them and put it up on LinkedIn, which he talked about on his most recent blog. But I tried to wear a different hat and say, okay, with the same subscription, maybe you could still benefit from multiple revenue streams through a single subscription. But why a different app?
If I look at it very black and white and pragmatically, right, it's difficult in terms of discovery. Like if I'm not a sports watcher, for a platform to drive discovery for some live sports that goes on is at the cost of something else.
Fair
so think
enough.
about the
Okay.
carousel on top. And if you have an NFL game or an NBA game or even the IPL, it's going to take over the entire site for that time. So people who are, so if there's a 40, 45, 55% split in favor of sports watchers, 45% of your audience may not really want to see all of this stuff and may switch to something else. Now, if I'm a sport, and we know this out of statistically, news and sports are die-hard fans. If you're a sports watcher, you're a sports watcher. You're not like a flirty sports watcher. So, which means that that app is going to be something that you're going to go to and switch on like a channel on television, like you would do on regular TV, on appointment viewing. But if I'm, I'm the 45% of people who are like, I don't know, I just want to go and get entertained, and there happens to be a game on, then maybe I'd have some advertising on this side to direct me to the next channel. But I would anyway get to watch maybe some other content that I was picking up to watch at that point in time, some kind of show, some kind of general entertainment that I want to watch. But I feel like this move could be attributed to the fact that sports watchers are very, very rabid about sports watching. They're very committed.
So what you're saying is, when I am seeking out a sports stream, I'm very consciously seeking it out. I'm
I'll
not
ask you a
mulling
question.
around.
Have you gone back to GOTV?
No,
Yeah, why not? I mean, you were switching it on every day for the last, I don't know how
to
many
watch the
ever,
World Cup.
yeah,
Yeah.
to watch the World Cup. But you haven't gone back to GOTV. But today, but in a couple of weeks, right, we're in 2023, we'll soon have IPL on it. And GOTV will be back in demand with avid sports watchers. But if you flip that around and you had a general entertainment channel on which there was sports,
Yeah.
the GEC guys are going to get tamped down because there's only place for one at the top. So
I guess that makes sense. If I think about my own behavior, every time I have looked to watch a game, I already know that it's the game's on at 7 p.m. this evening, and then I go and hunt it down wherever it is. I'm not scrolling through Netflix and say, "Oh, there's a game going on right now." It's usually not how I watch sport. So maybe that makes sense. Plus the fact that sports is so expensive today that maybe it requires a dedicated experience. Maybe it requires
also dedicated discovery, recommendation. You know how difficult it is for us to for anybody to be able to understand data today in terms of your watching patterns. If I need to separate you out as a diehard sports fan versus soap opera fan, it gets confusing after a while. So I mean, I'm looking at it from that perspective, like as a different channel. And also that there is so much content today that you're actually drowning in content and you're really not able to discover stuff because everything is on your phone or on your TV, and it's confusing to get to the right thing at the right time. And and our attention is so fickle, GEC guys, because I'm not that much of a sports watcher as you are.
I've seen you.
I am. I get hassled by sports, right? So I don't want to get my like, I don't want to get hassled by it. So
Yeah.
I want to watch television to sort of zone out. So yeah, so I want to get to my shows faster.
Yeah.
Likewise for you, you want to get to your game faster.
I watch soap operas.
I know, but I'm just saying when there is a
I'm a
game.
die-hard sports soap opera fan. I watched Too Hot to Handle last week.
Oh my God. That's a different level
Season
altogether.
3.
Don't tell people these things loudly.
This we'll beep it out in post. The last thing that I'm excited about, speaking of sports and Netflix, and also what we discussed last week, is Breakpoint and Full Swing are dropping this week, and then Full Swing drops next month. So I'm excited about all the sports content that's coming out of Netflix. Last topic, and then I will have another last topic after that. Why do I stink at counting? I always do this. I'll say, I'm going to tell you 3 points, and then I'll...
You start with 1 and then you go to B.
1, B, 3, C. CES 2023. We talked about it last week.
Yeah.
And all the people we follow were... Why were we not there? I think we should just hang out in Vegas and just attend everything that takes place.
I think we should do New Year's in Vegas and then continue.
That's probably what all these
And
guys
Voido
did.
can pay for it as well.
Somebody's got to pay. I'm not paying. Third Wave,
Yeah.
coffee please. Or Cello, Pinpoint, all the products that
Are currently in the room with us.
Yeti, Mike. I read 3 interesting pieces about CES. One was about the fact that CES was all about smart cars, smart toilets, and bigger screens. There was a very interesting piece of criticism that someone wrote on LinkedIn. I forget the name. I should put it in the show notes. But I read an interesting LinkedIn post, as one does, which talked about the fact that CES has again showcased a lot of cool technology, but given where the world is, and if you are one of those people who is worried about the world, like Mike White is, we should start focusing CES on technology that can actually solve some of the world's larger problems today, as opposed to general tech evolution itself. And I kind of buy that. I mean, I've never been to CES, but I buy the fact that if you're going to showcase smart cars and smart toilets and bigger screens, and that's loosely accurate. They were talking about how, we're at war and we need vaccines to be distributed better, and there's a lot of problems across the planet. And maybe CES should start focusing on responsible technology a little more. I also read Evan Shapiro's post about what happens at the sidelines of CES, which is things that impact our industry. And he calls it the Great Reboot, where media and media tech companies are in alignment about the fact that there is a need for large change and a reboot of pretty much everything we know and love about our industry, but nobody actually has a clue about what it is. And so he talks about three things that we need to reboot in our industry and how this was visible across CES. One was the need for more sustainable practices, sustainable advertising, an awareness about our carbon footprint as an industry, and also the fact that growth at all costs is not sustainable as a business model. We saw this at IBC, where we were on a sustainability panel, and they touched upon the fact that sustainability is not just about carbon emissions, it's about sustainable businesses. And profits are not bad. Profits mean sustainable businesses, and then you can use those businesses to do some good. Two is, Evan talked about the fact that the industry has to think global. Every single large tech story and media story has always been something about the US, and the rest of the world is whenever they can get around to it.
And all of us from emerging markets only think about how do I get to the US.
Yes. But he talked about the fact that the way new companies are thinking are different. They're actually having global strategies or local strategies outside the US, and not just focusing on US-centric models that can spread themselves out across the planet. And three is diversity, which is something that we saw at IBC and I saw at the DPP leaders briefing, where there was a huge focus on diversity within our industry. So interesting takes on CES from multiple angles.
Yep. Lots of launches. TVs are a big deal as well. Roku also launched their own television. Alan Walk from TV Rev wrote a very tongue-in-cheek piece about what's happening with Roku TV and why are they even launching it. But they're basically trying to react to what Wall Street is wanting them to do. I mean, they're one amongst several TVs right now. And apparently the timeline in which actually Americans change televisions is about 6 to 7 years. And Roku is launching one right now. So there's so much backlog already. So there is something to be said about smart televisions that are going to come into our homes. I feel like India may pick up on that much faster than any other country, only because we saw this happen with mobile phones. And the fact that we have great internet connectivity, we have 5G.
Cheap.
It's cheap. It's all pervasive. Like on the remotest farm land in India, you can actually get good signal. It's not that bad. And so I feel like this could be the next wave for us in terms of TV sets, because I think we still have a huge CRT television like backlog already that are in our homes that could be flipped out now for CTVs. Not necessarily smart digital set-top boxes, but an entire television that just comes to be snapped onto your wall or slapped onto your desk, and you put it on and it just plays your shows, because everybody's already used to their phones. And think about what I did in my house. I use my phone as a remote control, but I use the television as a bigger screen to watch and get more entertained and have a lean back experience, so to speak, or have a shared experience, which I can see happening in India. And if the prices are palatable, which today they are not, if they're able to come out with a cheap television, it'll be great. So if Roku is listening to me, and if they're able to come at a price point that is really cheap, India's a good market.
I think so.
It's a good market.
I have been poked and prodded many times in my own household to buy a smart TV, and I have not done it.
Yeah. It'll happen. It'll happen soon enough.
Yeah, it will.
Because you'll get tired of the wires and paying Tata Sky and I don't know what else.
Fabric of my house is also changing this week because my mother-in-law is moving in. And contrary to what I would have thought, she actually is not a big television watcher. She watches a lot of content and all of it on her phone. All of it. She has every single app you can think of. And now she's casting it to the big screen and she's like, this is fun. And so I'm watching all the algorithms that we are obviously going to get very confused by what's going on in my house, because you're going to go from die-hard sports and soap opera and reality content to now me, my wife and my mother-in-law to parenting content. I think it's very confusing for everyone. I love spooking all the algorithms.
The other thing that I liked about what I heard over the last week was the statement again by this Blockgraph CEO, who says that in the last couple of years, we moved ahead decades at a time every month in terms of consumer behavior, right? And I think now we're all kind of catching our breaths to say, okay, now we've moved so far ahead in what consumers expect. How is the industry going to actually catch up to what the expectation is? So CS also had some flavors of reality as well. What Galileo with Trade Desk Galileo launch where they're talking about interoperability of audience sets where you don't have to reveal the underlying data. The same thing was spoken about in Amazon's AWS's reInvent. They spoke about clean rooms, and clean rooms are like the new buzzword after CTV. Or CTV is always going to be the winner, but the fact that interoperability, understanding identity, making sure that you're compliant, making sure that you're able to share your audience data without flouting any kind of regulatory rules, I think is also going to be something that will bring us better content, bring us better experiences, make us give us information where we want to go, right, as users and consumers. So that's also exciting.
Before we close, I wanted to plug in something that we're doing in the office today, which we are going to record and put some snippets up on all our social
Instagram.
channels. We are hosting the first Voiro Roundtable of 2023, where we're getting Voiro's most hardcore gamers and everybody else on the team to talk about in-game advertising. And Leena Ghosh, who is pulling this together from our team, has specifically said fence sitters will not be allowed.
Gosh, I was going to be a fence sitter.
You can not allowed. Yeah, so if you want to be there, you got to pick a side.
Yeah. So the crux is that there are two very polarized views on gaming, right? Whether it's something that's really hot at this point in time or something that's fizzling out.
Yeah.
So like Leena puts it, hot versus not.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Anand. Deep question for you.
What is the question?
Hot versus not.
Uh-huh.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt.
George Clooney.
Brad Pitt ruled the Golden Globes this time. Everybody had a shout out to him. He was like the golden boy sitting in Golden Globes.
I want to just live by Mono Lake and relax. I think George Clooney's got the greatest life.
He knows what it is.
I think he really knows what it is.
Also, they're going to remake Ocean's 11.
This is in the Ocean's what?
No, they're going to remake Ocean's 11.
I don't want a remake.
I know. I don't understand why they want to do this. I was really upset.
I'm not a big fan. I didn't like the new Lion King.
But there's Margot Robbie and...
I refuse to watch it.
And somebody else in it.
Doesn't matter. Then make Ocean's 17. Or you don't need to remake Ocean's 11.
I agree. I totally agree. On that note of no remake, bye. And next time I will see you online instead of in this office.
Yeah.
And thank you to the crew, because I'm sure that since we are recording remotely, everybody will also be dialing in remotely.
Maybe they'll all just sit around you.
Maybe I'll have this room to myself and I can light myself up any which way I want to.
So can I in my house.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you for listening.